Or dial 511 on your phone.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Bronny James finally had a productive game for the Lakers rookie team. LeBron's son had 12 points Wednesday night in the Lakers' one-point win over Atlanta in the NBA Summer League in Las Vegas. Bronny also sank his first three-pointer in Summer League play after going 0 for 15. The Lakers play Cleveland tonight at 6, live coverage on ESPN. Indiana Fever rookie Caitlin Clark set a WNBA single-game record with 19 assists in the Fever's loss to Dallas. The previous record was 18. Tiger Woods tees off today in the British Open, one of the 4 majors on the PGA Tour. Woods hasn't won a major since the Masters in 2019. 3 of the 15 majors Woods has won have come at the British Open. At the moment, Woods just wants to make the cut and take his chances later in the final 2 rounds. Woods failed to make the cut in his last 2 tournaments, the PGA Championships and the U.S. Open. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is the fastest growing talk radio station in Southern California. Home to 50,000 watts and an audience reach of 12 million listeners. KBLA Talk 1580 is a pioneer for Black audio content, including our groundbreaking $2 million climate justice campaign and the most loyal, influential audience. According to an independent research study by the polling firm Editorial, for the 2nd consecutive year, KBLA Talk 1580 is the most trustworthy, reliable, and credible news source for Black audiences and beyond in Southern California. Let KBLA Talk 1580 power your advertising dollars. Our omni-channel custom marketing solutions are specifically tailored to connect with your ideal target audience. We leverage audio, podcasts, streaming, digital, social media, and local activations to get your message out to the Black community. Get in touch with our advertising team today at advertising@KBLA1580.com. That's advertising@KBLA1580.com. KBLA 1580. We've got your Black.
That's Mary J. I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm delighted to have you hanging out with us today. What a spirited hour we had already on today's program. And this hour will be spirited as well, in a different way. But spirited, let me try another word, spirit-filled. Maybe that's better. A spirited first hour, a spirit-filled second hour. Our guest in this hour is back by popular demand, as they say. When she was here last, we only had a few minutes. We didn't have the full hour based on how the schedule was working that day. And we received such a huge response from the audience, wanting more from Aloo Arthur. And so we asked her to come back, and we finally got it scheduled, and she is here in studio. And I'm delighted to have her here. If you not watched us and you're watching us live or listening live, turn on YouTube, turn on our YouTube channel, go to our app, and you can actually see her in studio with me. But she is America's most visible death doula. Aloo Arthur is her name. She's, again, here to talk about death, her work of providing compassionate end-of-life planning, training, and support through her organization, Going with Grace. I love that name, as I said earlier, Going with Grace. Her New York Times bestselling book is called Briefly, Perfectly Human. I love that title. Briefly, Perfectly Human, Making an Authentic Life by Getting Real About the End. And we will traverse the pages of that text as we move through this hour. First of all, Aloo, good to have you back. You heard me say a moment ago, You're back because people kept asking for more of that conversation, which actually kind of shocked me. On the one hand, it did. One hand, it didn't. It didn't shock me, given how brilliant you were when you were here and how brilliant you are. So I could see people wanting more. And I've said many times, the mark of a good conversation is that the audience wants more of it. So you over excelled in that regard. But I was shocked by the fact that people wanted to hear more of a conversation about death. How do you read that last part?
That doesn't shock me at all.
Okay.
Because I think that we actually want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people always couch it in terms of the great taboo. Nobody wants to talk about death. But in fact, I find that my work gives people permission to do so. And so when we begin the conversation, then folks are in. They're either talking to me about what happened when their mother, brother, father, sister, pet spider died, or they want to talk about what happens after we die, or they just want to throw around ideas about their own mortality. So I think we just need permission to talk about it. So I'm not surprised folks are curious to hear more.
This notion of death, this conversation about death is, I think, front and center for many Americans, in part because of the assassination attempt of a former president last Saturday. Never mind what you think of Donald Trump. And I don't think much of Donald Trump. That's just me, just being transparent there. But no matter what you think of him, nobody wants to see anybody assassinated. My humanity, my spirituality, my faith doesn't allow me to revel in anybody, even if I disagree with them wholeheartedly, being offed by a sniper. I'm not that low. I don't stoop that low. So this conversation about death has been all in the news the last week, given the assassination attempt against Donald Trump. And I wonder what you think something like that does to the psyche, or how that aid and abets, or frankly just puts us in the wrong frame, you tell me, in conversation about death, when that is the storyline that we're wrapping the conversation around. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Naturally, it just hits on our fear, our deep, deep, deep-seated fear that at any moment, any one of us could die. And for all intents and purposes, here we see a former president standing on a podium, and then there are shots, and then there's fear and chaos. And several people did die that day. And we need to also focus on them, because there was a loss of life for some. For others, just the fear was sparked. And anytime that fear of death comes up nationally, you know, when all of us are in it, is a great time for us to really begin talking about mortality. Another thing that came up that day that I thought was pretty important was that instantly people started talking about secession plans, or what would have happened if the assassination attempt was successful. Like, what happens next? And that's something that people aren't often talking about in their own lives. And so it's unfortunate incident, absolutely, and also a great place to begin the conversation about what happens when somebody prominent dies.
Yep. What do you make of the fact that there are certain conversations this country has, or that we as fellow citizens have, but we only have them born of a major tragedy?
Yeah.
I've been at this for quite a while as a broadcaster, television and radio, and I can't begin to tell you the number of conversations that we have been ushered into on my watch, born of these tragedies. It seems like absent a tragedy, we can't find our way into conversations that we otherwise needed to have been having anyway. So when we come forward, I want to give you a chance to respond to that. Just getting started in this hour with Aloo Arthur, the nation's most visible death doula. Her book is called Briefly, Perfectly Human, Making an Authentic Life by Getting Real About the End. It's going to get realer as we move through this hour. I promise you, you're listening, and I'm glad about it, to Tavis Smiley.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
Can you dig it? Come on!
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
My friends swim no matter the season, but my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis can sometimes take me out of the moment. Now, thanks to Skyrizi and clear skin, count me in. With Skyrizi, Risankizumab Riza, a prescription-only 150 milligram injection for adults who are candidates for systemic or phototherapy. 3 out of 4 people achieve 90% clear skin at 4 months.
Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check for infection and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms such as fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, or if you plan to or recently received a vaccine.
Thanks to Skyrizi, there's nothing on my skin, and that means everything. Ask your doctor today about Skyrizi, the #1 dermatologist-prescribed biologic in psoriasis, and visit skyrizi.com or call 1-866-SKYRIZI to learn more.
Eric was way behind on his taxes.
I owed a lot of money to the IRS, almost $15,000.
Eric called Optima Tax Relief.
When Optima Tax got involved, the calls would stop, the threats would stop. It was easy like 1, 2, 3.
Optima Tax Relief took care of Eric's problem.
And now my debt is clean. I don't owe anything.
Call Optima Tax Relief for a free consultation. Call 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077.
Optima Tax Relief.
Ooh, I'm so ready for this weekend away with my girls.
Hey, hit the road? How about some free gas?
Free gas? How?
Try new Febreze car for some serious freshness and you can win gas for a full year. Visit Febreze.com to learn more.
Say less.
You may not win, but you're gonna have a fresh smelling whip.
Thanks, DJ Fresh. Now how about some music?
Hey, yo, this next one goes out to new Febreze car for giving you a chance to win free gas.
La 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 la.
No purchase necessary. Must be 18 to enter N73124 for rules and how to enter. Visit Febreze.com.
He's rooting for everybody black.
Everybody black.
More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
Well, Tavis Smiley and Aloo Arthur coming your way right now. America's most visible death doula. Her book, once again, is called Briefly, Perfectly Human, Making an Authentic Life by Getting Real About the End. And I'm pleased to have her live in studio. I was saying a moment ago, Alua, that it seems to me that there are certain conversations that we ought to otherwise be having that we tend not to get into unless there's some tragedy that ushers us into that space. Why is that the case, to your mind, with death?
Similarly, it's because it gives us an opportunity to finally talk about these things that are most on our hearts. Death is one of those conversations that people want to push away. I think we push it away because we don't want to think about how powerless we are in the face of it. And so when something happens, something publicly, the pandemic, for example, which the fear of death is the thing that pushed us all into our homes and kept us there for as long as it did and kept us away from each other. When something like that happens, it creates space for us to begin finally having the conversation. You also often see it happen when a celebrity dies. When somebody in the public consciousness and the public lexicon dies, then we begin to talk about death and dying. When a family member, a beloved family member dies, then people want to start talking about it. But the right time to begin talking about death for anybody is right now. Right now, while we're still living, because none of us know tomorrow isn't promised, the next moment isn't promised. So we may as well begin right now.
Yeah. Let me circle back to Donald Trump and that assassination attempt for one particular reason. I think you'll take my point here. One of the things about Donald Trump that was if I can put it this way, it was a pre-existing condition before the assassination attempt, and it's only gotten worse, my word, since the assassination attempt, and that is this notion of his invincibility. I am king, and I do not die, and nobody takes me out, and nobody takes me down, and if you take me down, I will come back 4 years later and run and win re-election. And you have heard, we discussed it on this program yesterday, all those persons who are born of their Christology believe that he is God's man of the hour. You heard Tim Scott at the convention Monday night. The devil showed up with an AK-47 and God stepped in and saved Donald Trump. You see where I'm going with this. There is this notion that he is invincible, that he's all powerful, he's all knowing, he's all that and then some. And this notion of invincibility, that storyline, that frame broadens, it widens once you survive an assassination attempt. I come to that because I sense that many of us think wrongly that we are in fact invincible, that moment will never come for us. I can expand the conversation to my friends now gone, Aretha Franklin, Prince, who had no wills, had nothing in place, and then it throws everything into, everything gets crazy because there is no plan laid out. But I'll stop here. I think you take my point. It's this notion of invincibility and that death comes for everybody but me. Talk to me.
Well, first of all, it comes for all of us.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
nobody, no figure in history, no matter how rich or powerful or smart, has ever escaped.
I only know one. He went down for 3 days and came back up, but that's another conversation.
That's a whole other conversation.
I do know one who came back on the third day.
Another conversation.
Another conversation, yeah.
But nobody, everybody, our healers, our rulers, our presidents, our masters, everybody, it comes for everybody at some point. And a secondary point to think about is death comes whether or not we are prepared for it, you know, and when it comes, it is absolutely sovereign in its timing. We are invincible until we're not. No matter if it's not my time, I will not die. Attempts, illness, being careless, when it is my time, it will be my time. That fact brings me both ease and stokes a lot of fear in some people. But we're invincible until the moment that a bullet does catch us or until there's a car accident. But for the vast majority of us, when an illness starts within our bodies and it gets to the point where the body can no longer, and then our time will come.
Yep. That first part of your answer strikes me as interesting. That there is ease, not dis-ease, but there is ease in knowing that when it is my time, it will be my time. Where's the ease in that? I'm still dying.
Yeah, well, I can't control it.
Yeah.
You know, it allows me to take my hands off the reins. All the times I beat myself up about things that I did wrong, and I'm using air quotes around that, or the times that I should have done something and I did something else, and how I think I can control my life. I cannot control my death. I cannot control the timing of it. I can't control the facts. I can't control the circumstances unless I choose, of course, unless I choose, because there are many who do. But in the event that I don't, all of it is up for surrender. And it invites me into greater surrender. And in surrender, we find ease. Because I can't, when it's time, it will be time. And until then, well, I'm just going to keep living my life and doing the very best that I can.
To your point now that some do choose, indeed, some do choose. I was just reading a story the other day. The name escapes me. But there are still persons who aid and abet those who want to make the choice to end their lives if they have some terminal illness or what have you. Saw a story just the other day of somebody who did that, got arrested. And I see you wincing. I want to probe that wince in just a second. I see that look on your face. But this person got arrested and now will, be tried or something based on assisting someone in their own death. I'm thinking years ago, I'm aging myself here, years ago of Dr. Jack Kevorkian, who became the most famous person in this country for aiding and abetting persons who chose to make that particular decision. But the minute I referenced that, following your comment that some do choose to make that decision, you winced. What was that wince about?
The wince is about the lack of medical aid in dying laws around the country. Currently, I believe there's only 11 states that have medical aid in dying laws on the books, where people who have 6 months or less to live can talk to doctors. It depends on the state where you live, what the regulations are, but can talk to a doctor, affirm that they do not want to live through the end of their lives and get the medicine for it. Sometimes there's a waiting period before you get the medicine, before you can take it, etc. And when those laws are in place, they create space so that folks that help other people who don't want to live anymore are not prosecuted. That wince was about the lack of laws, the fact that only 11 states currently have laws on the books. There are organizations like Compassion and Choices that are working to change that. I firmly believe in the individual right to self-determine their lives and thus their death. Firmly. It is at the core of the work that I do, is everybody should have agency in how they approach their death and thus also their life. And so who am I to say that somebody who has a very, very serious illness, who does not want to completely devolve, cannot have the agency in how they leave?
We talked earlier about that one person that I'm aware of who went down and came up on the third day with all power in his hand. O death, where's thy sting? O grave, where's your victory? We know, those of us who are Christians know that passage quite well. We referenced that earlier. Here you come now suggesting to me that at the epicenter of your work is your fundamental belief that people have agency in that choice. How do you square that belief? I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just asking, how do you square that belief with the notion that the Lord giveth and that the Lord taketh away? That is his domain, not ours. Well, his purview, not ours.
I believe it's all one and the same.
Okay.
I believe it's one and the same because the Lord also giveth agency.
Yeah.
the death is sovereign in its timing, and that timing may be that I am at the end of my life because of a serious illness and I can no longer and I don't want to any longer. That Lord gave me that agency to choose. And right now we have the medicine that allows people to do so. You know, this conversation is a separate conversation from people that choose suicide as a result of mental illness or the number of other areas, but they're similar in the way that we have been given the opportunity to be conscious in this life, to make choices that serve us, that serve our lives, and thus also our death. And if the Lord giveth that, the Lord also can taketh away that. But that remains. We still have the right to choose. I don't think those two things are at odds. I think they fall firmly within the same paradigm.
Yeah. Let me swing way out here.
Okay.
Back to Donald Trump one more again.
Okay.
And the assassination attempt. I wonder, might be a strange question, not the first or last bizarre question that I will ask, but I'm wondering if in your work you have found distinctly different ways that black folk look and view, or don't look and view, death as to the broader white community.
Yeah.
Is there anything there, or am I completely off base?
No, there are a few things there.
Okay,
I mean,
give it to me.
I think
unpack it for me.
in some ways it's stronger in the black community that you don't want to talk about it at all because you might call it upon yourself. You know, it's like don't bring it here because you're going to actually bring it here.
The death angel.
The death angel. You're going to bring him right into our house.
Right.
And, you know, to that, I think it ties back to what we were talking about earlier, and the supreme timing of death is that no matter how much I talk about it, I've been talking about death for 10 straight years, been talking about my own death. I'm still here, and I'm going to be here as long as I'll be here, regardless of whether or not I talk about it. And, you know, regardless of how we approach the conversation, death will come at some point for all of us. It's not going to come any faster. So that's one thing that I see in the black community that happens a little bit more than I see in the white community. I also see some greater desire to like celebrate the life after it ends, which is something that I really appreciate. But sometimes it also shows up in terms of spending money that I think sometimes the people that died would not have wanted us to go into debt in order to bury or to celebrate the life of. That's something else I see in the black community. But I also see people really rallying around the dying also, you know, either through prayer or just through love and support and hugs in a way that I wish all society would do.
Yeah. I will say this to your point now. You keep saying more things that make me think, which is the mark of a great conversation. I have always, aside from the fact you go to funerals and comedians have made jokes about this for decades, you go to black funerals and somebody's trying to jump in the casket, mama don't go, mama don't go. You know, yeah, I don't want my mama to go either, but I can guarantee you if she goes before me, I'm not trying to jump in the casket with her. I'm not that Negro. But I do love, and I want to get your take on this since you raised it, I do love the way that black people celebrate our homegoings. I love the way that we just go all out to celebrate the life and legacies, the lives and legacies of the ones that we love. That brings me comfort. I'm not one for going down looking in the casket. That's just not me either. But I do love the tradition that we have of the way we put our people away.
Me too. Yeah. And I also really love that on the one side is Mama Don't Go, throwing ourselves in caskets, throwing ourselves on the ground like a big expression of grief and wailing and sorrow. And 2 hours later, the next day, we are eating and dancing and hugging and laughing and being alive in death as well. That's something that I think black folks do incredibly well across the board, is that I think we hold the broader spectrum of what it means to be human at one go. I mean, if you look at what history has done to our bodies, etc. But I think we are capable of showing up for the pain and the sorrow and the difficulty of death and then turning right back around and eating delicious food and dancing shortly afterward.
Yeah, the repast is something else, ain't it?
Something else.
Yeah. What do you say to the persons who, beyond the repast, don't make the turn, can't make the turn that you just referenced? I'm thinking of a friend of mine in high school. I may have told you this story. A friend of mine in high school named Janet, who died tragically in a car accident. And she was a sophomore in high school, far too young to die. She was an only child. And every time I hear the song from Joe Cocker, "You Are So Beautiful," I have to turn it off. I'm approaching my 60th birthday this year. This happened when I was a freshman in high school, And all these years later, I cannot hear that song, You Are So Beautiful. Because when the service was over and everybody was walking around to view the body, Janet's body in the casket, they played that song on a loop. You are so beautiful to me. And they played it over and over. There were hundreds of us at this funeral. So that song must have played, 20, 30 times on that loop. And all these years later, it's a great song. I loved it prior to. Now I can't stand to hear it. And I love Joe Cocker. But I can't stand to hear that song. My point is that Janet's mother may have survived the repast, but the day after, she went into a deep funk, a deep depression, and she couldn't pull herself out of it, and ended up having to put her in a psychiatric facility because she lost her baby, her only child, was too old to produce another one. And even if she could, Janet is Janet, right? So what do you say to those persons who, beyond the repast, can't make that turn? And so we're talking about the joy that we find that we bring back into our lives once we get past that moment, but some people never get past that moment.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. The story that you just told me is one of a lot of tragedy. That's a highly traumatic moment for Janet's mother, and I even hear bits of trauma and how you talk about the song comes on and you have to turn it off immediately. That's understandable. Dying in a car crash at that age is something that will set a lot of people off. And her mother, of course, I don't have children myself. I have a hard time imagining what it is like. There's no way I could imagine what it's like to lose a child. And grief is a long journey that we all undertake very individually, and it shows up in different ways in different people. Those of us that have grieved somebody for a long time understand that there are ebbs and flows to it, that there are days when it is impossible to get up and out of bed, and it's devastating. The weight of grief sits on you like a heavy, wet blanket that you cannot shake off. And then there are days when you think of them or you hear their name and it makes you want to giggle, and it makes you smile, and you think about the joy that they brought to your life. Both those things are true. And those of us that have grieved for a long time understand that grief is, we just have to ride the wave. For people like Janet's mom, this is what grief ended up doing to her, and that is tragic, and also the way that grief was expressed through her at that time. I don't know what else was going on in her mental, emotional, spiritual body that created that. I don't think that death is something that we have to get over, and I'm using air quotes. I think it's something that we learn how to integrate. We learn how to live with loss. We don't get over it. We just learn that at some point you can also smile when you think of them, and you will still cry.
Speaking personally, I am learning myself every day how to live with loss. Since you were last here, I lost my father. We just buried my father about 6 weeks ago, and so I'm still navigating that myself. And I may share a bit more about that when we come forward and get some help from you here on the radio, and maybe you're helping me will help others. So I'm trying to learn how to live with that myself. Just 6 or 7 weeks now. But I also want to ask when we come forward how it is that you, Aloo Arthur, have become so comfortable talking about death. You made that point earlier. You've written a book about it. We'll get inside the book when we come forward as well. But it's my second time now sitting face to face talking to you, and I see your own level of comfort talking about something that the rest of us have such difficulty addressing. I'm curious on a personal level how you got so comfortable talking about such a difficult topic. Her name is Aloo Arthur. Her book is Briefly, Perfectly Human, Making an Authentic Life by Getting Real About the End. More with her when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know? The United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time. Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Mike Moore. Now here's the latest from the Black Information Network. President Biden is canceling events while he recovers from COVID-19. Biden tested positive for the virus in Las Vegas, Nevada yesterday and was forced to cancel an afternoon speech to a Latino civil rights group. The president was reportedly experiencing mild COVID symptoms, and he has returned to Delaware, where he will self-isolate. Nearly 2 in 3 black women are behind President Biden. A new survey from The Cut shows that 64% of black women said they'd vote for the Biden-Harris ticket if the election were held today. It's a demographic crucial for Biden to win to stay in the White House. The poll was taken in early June before the Biden-Trump debate and before President Trump's assassination attempt. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. At Blindster, we offer custom-made faux wood and real wood blinds and shutters, cellular shades, Roman shades, bamboo shades, exterior shades, and more, all at factory direct prices. Don't pay too much for new blinds. Go to Blindster.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Bronny James finally had a productive game for the Lakers rookie team. LeBron's son had 12 points Wednesday night in the Lakers' 1-point win over Atlanta in the NBA Summer League in Las Vegas. Bronny also sank his first three-pointer in Summer League play after going 0 for 15. The Lakers play Cleveland tonight at 6, live coverage on ESPN. Indiana Fever rookie Caitlin Clark set a WNBA single-game record with 19 assists in the Fever's loss to Dallas. The previous record was 18. Tiger Woods tees off today in the British Open, one of the 4 majors on the PGA Tour. Woods hasn't won a major since the Masters in 2019. 3 of the 15 majors Woods has won have come at the British Open. At the moment, Woods just wants to make the cut and take his chances later in the final 2 rounds. Woods failed to make the cut in his last 2 tournaments, the PGA Championships and the U.S. Open. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice, and injustice. The courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Ariva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Ariva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. If we're the ones disproportionately impacted by these climate catastrophes,
Why should we be silent?
turning up the volume all year long on the climate conversation for KBLA Talk 1580.
Substance use disorder and addiction is so isolating. And so, as a Black woman in recovery, hope must be loud. It grows louder when you ask for help and you're vulnerable. It is the thread that lets you know that no matter what happens, you will be okay.
When we learn the power of hope, recovery is possible. Find out how at startwithhope.com. Brought to you by the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, Shatterproof, and the Ad Council.
$5,000. That's the average amount of money people in the U.S. are now spending on gas in a year. $5,000. That's crazy. If you drive, you have to download Upside, the free app that gives you cash back every time you get gas. That's right. You can earn real cash back with Upside just by buying the gas you're already buying. You can literally start earning cash back today.
I use Upside every time I fill up, and I've already made around $200-$300.
You're putting gas in your car anyway. Why not get real cash back? If you like free money, download Upside.
I'm saving the cash I earn from using Upside to help pay for a vacation later this year.
Download the free Upside app now to earn cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code PATH to get an extra 25 cents per gallon on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank, PayPal, or a gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Upside app and use promo code PATH for a 25 cents per gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code PATH for a 25 cents per gallon bonus.
Work is busy, and home, pretty much the same.
But you wouldn't know it because my skin doesn't look stressed thanks to Olay Retinol Body Wash. Its hydrating formula is packed with vitamin B3 complex plus retinol. I use Olay Retinol Body Wash to transform my skin from dry to moisturized and visibly renewed. Sure, I still have stress, but my skin looks amazing. Try Olay Retinol Body Wash for visibly renewed skin in just 14 days. Also try Retinol 24 Body Lotion.
More honesty than you can handle.
More empowerment than you can imagine.
You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
I'm Tavis Smiley. Our guest is Aloo Arthur. She is the nation's most visible death doula. We are honored to have her in studio. Her book is called Briefly, Perfectly Human, Making an Authentic Life by Getting Real About the End. And this conversation, as I promised 36 minutes ago, is going to get realer as we move through it. So Aloo and I were just sitting here talking amongst ourselves moments ago, preparing to come back on the air. And she was asking about my dad, and I was sharing her a bit about my father. And she asked me how I was grieving. And I said to her, as I will now say to you, that the greatest part of my grief, frankly, has not been even for the loss of my father. I miss my father dearly. The greatest source of my grief is looking at my 7 baby brothers. Even at the funeral, I was doing okay through the funeral until I looked over and saw them breaking down, and then I just lost it. So it's, for me, being concerned about them. So I find myself checking in on them more frequently. I have a birthday coming up in September, and I called them the other day and I said, I want all y'all to come out to see me. So we're going to get together as a family for my birthday this year, the first time we'll all be together again. 10 kids in my family since my father was buried 6 or 7 weeks ago. So that I find myself checking in more on them, but just trying to help them manage their grief. So that's the sore spot for me, or that's the slummy side, if you will. The sunny side, quoting my friend Jesse Jackson, the slummy side, the sunny side. That's the slummy side. The sunny side is realizing, after my father transitioned, how much he loved me and loved us. And by that I mean, when we went to the house and went into the file cabinet, there, unlike my friends Aretha and Prince, was everything laid out. When I tell you that I am still, and I'm not bragging about this, my father was not a wealthy man, but I'm telling you this, I am still on the phone every day collecting insurance policies, plural, that my father left us, plural, multiple insurance policies. My father handled his business. There it all was in one place. Not once in my life did my father ever talk to me about this. My mother's stuff I'm fully aware of. I'm the executor of her estate. I got all that stuff squared away. My dad didn't say a word. My dad wasn't a talker. We went to that house and went in that file cabinet, Aloo. Everything was there. And I saw that as an act of love. Here my father is dead, but he's speaking to me and my siblings about how much he loved us, by how prepared he was for this moment and what he was leaving to all of us. And so, again, the grief part is just trying to manage my baby brothers, but the joy part is knowing that my father loved me enough and us enough to have handled his business in the way that he did. Does that make sense?
100%. I see so many people in the midst of deep, deep, deep grief that are also frustrated with the person they loved who died because there is not one instruction about how to do anything. And so they're in the days of trying to also alchemize the loss while also trying to figure out where the paperwork is and looking in all types of places, like under the bed and in the freezer and in random filing cabinets and under
couch cushions.
Under couch cushions
Yeah.
and the bonnets and the sock drawer. It's supremely supportive if we do our best to get our affairs in order while we are still living so that it is easier on the people that we love after we die. Also, and we were talking about this since this was your father, it is also another beautiful act of parenting to do so. We learn how to die based on how the people before us did it. And I'm sure you are also like, well, shoot, this was a beautiful thing my father did. You probably want to pay that for it as well.
That's right.
And so it's a great way to keep that love going after we die by just getting our stuff together while we're still here. Make it a little easier on the folks.
Yeah. How did you get so comfortable talking about death?
I don't know.
Yeah. I didn't see that answer coming, but I love it.
I love it. Yeah. I had no idea. On some level, I feel, well, let me back up. So I started my professional career as an attorney. I worked at the Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles for almost 10 years.
I love the work they do.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
I
their
love
work.
the work.
And there are
I
many
love the
legal
work.
aid foundations across the country.
Yes.
But I love the essence of what they do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
It was not a good fit for who I am as a
Right.
person.
Mhm.
I wanted to talk about trauma and healing and art and awe and mystery, but I had to check boxes and make sure that people got their benefits. And it was great for what we were able to do for them. It wasn't a good fit for me. And I grew really depressed, where I started thinking about my life in like big terms. Like, this is not what I want to be doing with my life. And how did I get here? I couldn't find my way out of this really, really deep depression. And I think it's important that we talk often about our mental health overall, but also in the conversation around death and dying. In that depression, I went to Cuba, where I met a fellow traveler on a bus who had uterine cancer. And we spent a lot of time talking about her mortality. She shared with me a lot of her thoughts about her life, her death, what she regretted, what she still wanted, what she hoped she would make out of her life still, what was left of it. And I started thinking about my own mortality in that way. And I say it's important for us to think about both mental health and death, a conversation together, because one impacts the other. But also, I began to look at my life from the perspective of my deathbed and saw that the type of life I was living was not one that I wanted to live. I wanted a lot more joy. I wanted a lot more purpose. I wanted a lot more freedom. I wanted to feel like myself in my work, where we spend so much of our time. And so it allowed me to shift my mental health trajectory through looking at my mortality. And then a few months afterward, my brother-in-law got sick, and as he was dying, I got to support him through his death. And that really opened everything up for me. And I noticed that it was a role, it was a conversation that I felt absolutely comfortable in. I often find myself saying the things that other people are thinking, I think, but aren't saying, or at least I'm thinking it, and I can't help but say it sometimes, or can't help but ask the difficult question, or a question like, how's your grief? You know, I want to know these things about human. That curiosity helps in having this conversation. It also helps that I think I'm comfortable in a lot of emotional depth. I can be with people's rage and sorrow and grief and sadness and joy and laughter and silliness all at the same time. So I think that's how one gets comfortable. You do it a lot. That helps.
Yeah, that helps. I am thinking as you tell that story about what I would term the redemptive nature of death. I do believe that death is redemptive in a lot of ways. If we had time, we can go into a deep philosophical conversation about that if we had the time. But I believe that death in many ways can be redemptive. In this instance, it's redemptive given that your brother-in-law is making his transition. So he is dying, but he's giving you life.
Life.
Does that make sense?
100%.
And not only in his death is he giving you life, he's giving you life to help others navigate their own journeys. So his death ends up being, exponentially. Am I making sense here?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You found your purpose in that moment, and now you've helped other people.
Absolutely. Here's something that people often forget about death and dying is that a death means that something new is being born.
Right.
You know, energy is neither created nor destroyed. So when something dies, something else is born instantly. And our grief can sometimes be a seed, you know, that death is planted, the grief becomes a seed, a new seedling of ourselves grows, something comes from its place. And what came from its place for me was a very, very clear purpose. What we went through with him, I don't want anybody to ever suffer again. I wanted somebody to be present. I wanted somebody to answer our phone calls and give us instruction and help us talk to my 4-year-old niece about death and tell us that we were doing a good job and to confirm how terrible it was. And I could not find anybody. And so I decided I'd be that somebody for other people.
Sometimes in life we have to assign ourselves.
Hey.
We have to assign ourselves.
Aloo Arthur, Death Doula.
There you go. When we come forward, I want to get into the book, but let me just ask you before I jump here too quickly about this title. I've said 3 times now that I love this title. Briefly, Perfectly Human. Briefly, Perfectly Human. Making an authentic life by getting real about the end. I've written a few books myself, as you know, and titles matter. They really do matter. And you nailed this thing. So just tell me first about the title. When we come forward, we'll get inside the book.
Briefly, Perfectly Human. This matter of time that we're here is so small. My life is but a pinprick of time in a vast, vast, vast universe. Perfect is that this is the way that it's being done. You know, there's no other version of me that made all the right choices along the way that I can compare myself to. This one is it. This one is perfect, exactly how I live it. And human, I think that gives us space to be fully human, to have our light, to have our dark, to have our joy, to be perfect, to be brief, and also to die.
Briefly, Perfectly Human, making an authentic life by getting real about the end. We've been talking about all the stuff in the book anyway, but we'll get more expressly into it when we come forward here on Tavis Smiley.
Interrogating and unpacking. That's what we do around here. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
All I need is one mic.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. Just a few short months ago, California Attorney General Rob Bonta filed 11 felony charges against Diana Turan, an assistant district attorney for Los Angeles County. The charges allege that Turan unlawfully accessed confidential computer data, including police officer files in 2018, and continued to use them after joining the DA's office in 2021. Ironically, Turan, who is now on administrative leave, oversaw the Public Integrity Division responsible for handling high-profile cases of police misconduct and public corruption, including the charges brought against LA City Council member Karen Price last June. To be sure, the case against Price has raised plenty of eyebrows. Indeed, one noted legal scholar has said publicly, and I quote, "Everything about this prosecution reeks," close quote. Could A.G. Bonta, with aspirations to become California governor, be punishing Turan for her role in D.A. George Gascon's police accountability agenda to curry favor with police unions? Could D.A. Gascon be using the case against Price to showcase his tough stance on crime and political corruption as he vies to retain his seat as D.A.? Honestly, I have no idea, but here's what I know for sure. Karen Price has been elected and re-elected by thousands of voters, mostly black and brown, who stand to be further disenfranchised if this matter is not handled correctly, which is why it matters to us at KBLA Talk 1580. When the prosecutor is being prosecuted, it seems to me that at the very least, there ought to be a thorough, top-to-bottom, independent review of all cases under Diana Turan's purview to ensure that none of these cases have been tainted. Justice and fundamental fairness demand no less, if public trust truly matters. And I hope it does. For KBLA Talk 1580, I'm Tavis Smiley. We welcome your feedback.
Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
This is Tavis Smiley and Aloo Arthur. Her book is called Briefly, Perfectly Human, Making an Authentic Life by Getting Real About the End. What was your intent, your hope in the writing of this book? And I asked that because whatever the intent was, it worked. It is a New York Times best-selling book, so a whole lot of people are getting the point that you were trying to get across. What is the point?
Multiple points, but the biggest point, well, for starters, the book is a memoir. It tracks my journey into death care and my relationship with my life and thus my death. And then I highlight client stories along the way to talk about the work itself. My hope was to invite readers into their own lives because of their mortality, to create a safe way to think about death through me talking about my own death and my own life, for us to think about our humanness as a result of me talking about my own. And it seems to be working.
It is working quite well. I was struck, as I mentioned to you when you came in the studio, I was struck by, when I got into the book, the way that you approach the subject matter through the lens of memoir. I think it was a brilliant decision. Why that way in?
I don't like talking about myself, which might be surprising given that I wrote a memoir. I don't like being the center of attention. I'm the second child. And what I've noticed is that when I teach, because I teach death doulas at Going with Grace as well, when I teach, people seem to learn a lot better through story. They learn a lot more when I show them what I'm talking about as opposed to tell them what to do. And when it comes to how we live our lives, I don't think many people want somebody to give them instructions necessarily, but rather, here's an example. This is how I did it, and this is what I learned along the way, and I hope that it's helpful for other people.
Yep. Tell me, I want to ask this question in two parts, so let me just do it one at a time. Tell me about Going with Grace, and when we come forward, watching my clock here, I'm interested to know what one learns, what you're teaching in these classes. But tell me first about Going with Grace.
Going with Grace is a death doula training and end-of-life support organization. And so we train death doulas. At this point, we're about 2,500 across 17 countries thus far. So we train people that want to support other people through death and dying. We also match folks up that are looking for death doulas with people that we've trained in their locations or point them toward the directory so that they can find somebody themselves. We also have classes and offerings for people to be in awareness of and sit in awareness of their own mortality. So places for people to talk and think through their death anxiety and their death preparedness and anything related to how we live and thus how we die.
So when we come forward in our remaining moments with Aloo Arthur, we'll audit, at least for a few minutes, audit her class, her sessions. We'll get some of this Going with Grace, good knowledge. But I really am curious as to what and how, not just what, but how you teach and train a death doula. We'll do that when we come forward here on Tavis Smiley.
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like freedom. If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. Benefitscheckup.org.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada. Member FDIC.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA reminds you that when we fight, we win, and we don't black down. LA Community Action Network, or LA CAN, was formed in 1999 when 25 residents of downtown LA came together and acknowledged the problems that existed in their community and made a commitment to do something about those problems, to stand together, organize, and become a force in the community that demands change. Civil rights and preventing the criminalization of poverty are their core projects. In addition, they take on women's rights, the human right to housing, and healthy food access. LA CAN also has projects focused on economic development, civic participation, voter engagement, and community media. While downtown LA remains their home base, with a particular emphasis on the Skid Row community, in 2007 they expanded their housing and healthy food access work into South Central Los Angeles. LA CAN believes that power for low-income people and people of color is achieved through a large, active, and well-informed member base that utilizes a multitude of methods to advance their messages and goals. If you'd like to join the Los Angeles Community Action Network and organize people to fight back against oppression, please visit cangress.org. That's cangress.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
Made fresh daily in the Mert Park, Los Angeles, California. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Aloo Arthur. So, Aloo, take me inside the doors of Going with Grace. the metaphorical doors of going with grace. Take me inside there, and I'm interested in being a death doula. I want to help people through death and dying. What am I learning? What am I learning? Teach me.
Well, at the root of it, you're learning grace
Right.
for yourself, for humans, for people along their ride, for people in their journey into death as well. Practically, though, we're looking at your personal relationship with death and dying. We're going to look at the role of the death doula. We're going to look at conscious dying, how we bring consciousness and awareness into our dying process individually. We consider the role of medicine, how to work with medical care systems and teams. We look at how to care for bodies after death, natural death care, what dying looks like, how people die, how bodies die, because it's something that culturally and societally we don't really know because we push it away and we paint it a particular way in Hollywood. We also consider working with funeral homes and legacy, ritual, and meaning making, how to create some legacy and meaning making for somebody as they're dying. We also consider supporting folks in advanced planning and planning everything for their death, as we were talking about, like your father did. And also how to help family members wrap up affairs when their loved one dies, because that's a very important part of the work, because there's a lot of bureaucracy that goes into it. We also consider grief and bereavement periods, additionally burnout, because many caregivers and folks that are in the trench with people that are dying get burnt out. And then we also support folks in self-care and business building, practice building when they're done with the course.
I may have asked you this before. If I didn't, I want to ask now. And if I did, forgive me. I still want to know the answer a second time. For those who may not have heard our first conversation, is there a particular profile of persons who want to be in this space of death doula?
I think it's folks that have a lot of comfort and emotional depth,
Right.
folks that have built a personal relationship with death themselves. That does not mean that you have to have no fear of it. It just means that you can identify what yours is, so you're not putting it on another person. Somebody who can handle a lot of information, because we have to be present for a bunch of things that are going on, not only emotionally, but also logically and logistically. And also somebody who can hold the space well for other people, can allow humans the grace to just be human, to have a lot of varied responses to death and dying. And ideally, many people learn this work because there's somebody in their family that has been going out to when people have been dying a long time, so they've learned from them, or they learn because they volunteer for hospice. Some people come to a training course, but no matter how you do it, I think it's important that those of us that are doing it keep practicing the work too, and never become somebody who knows, but rather somebody who stays in the question, who stays in the learning.
You're still learning after all this time?
I hope I never stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the time. I think one key component of learning how to do this work and staying in it well is to stay curious about humans, about the human condition, about why we do the things that we do. When the cashier at CVS is frustrated and she's having a hard time, I stay curious about her experience, because there is something going on in her life. And one day at her death, all of this will matter. And so I want to stay curious about who she is. I want to stay curious when people are dropping bombs. I want to stay curious when people are acting in ways that I can't make sense of it, because they will all die.
Her book is called Briefly, Perfectly Human, Making an Authentic Life by Getting Real About the End. It is, as I said earlier, a New York Times best-selling book. Her name is Aloo Arthur. She is America's most visible death doula. She is back on this program today, or has been on for this hour, because her first appearance was so amazing that people wanted more. So there's more, another hour. But if you want even more, again, I highly recommend the New York Times best-selling book, Briefly, Perfectly Human, Making an Authentic Life by Getting Real About the End. Thank you, Aloo, for your work and for your witness. And I use that phrase a lot, but I use it with people who I believe it actually applies to. What you do is a work and a witness. It is a healing on top of all that. And I'm grateful for what you do, and I'm more delighted that you came in to see us today.
Thank you for having me back.
My great honor. When we come forward on Tavis Smiley, George Benson bringing the guitar on Tavis Smiley.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Thanks for joining each to a Latino civil rights group. The president was reportedly experiencing mild COVID symptoms, and he has